So with that being said, the floor is open to you. Anything burning that you need to ask questions about?
In the library, we purchase more books, we purchase more AR tests, every single penny. It flushes through. It goes back into our checking account so that we can flush it back into. But it is there is a line item set aside strictly for book fair and for the library. Ms. Jenko tells us what to order, or she orders it and we pay it.
When the state test changed 3 years ago, obviously there's a dip because they changed the rigor in the state test. So across the system, reading has gone down. It's not where it should be. I mean, we're at about 70, but we have no correlation between AR and our reading scores. None, zero. Because we use AR. I'll start at the beginning. Why are we not spending $5,000 on the comprehensive AR list? Part of that is we don't know what AR is going to look like. So when the PTO came to me and said, you want me to spend $5,000 on this AR list, I told them, we don't even know what AR is going to look like. But if we spend $5,000 on this comprehensive list, is it sending the message we want to send? I'm telling people that AR should not be the major part of what we're doing in our reading program. I just spent $5,000 on it. The other thing that's come up a lot is, and a parent brought this up, and it's stuck in my head ever since they brought it to me, is that they said, what do we celebrate at our school? You know, you've mentioned to me that you don't want to emphasize AR. AR is a percentage, small thing that's going on in your school. I've reduced it to setting your goal on 6 weeks versus 9 weeks. And you should be able to read books that are both AR and non-AR, whatever. But the only thing we actually celebrate in regard to academics at our schools, we have an AR celebration. That's interesting. I set priority by doing that. So I need to go back and re-look at all that. That's why we haven't spent the $5,000. I know I want smart boards in every classroom. It's a priority to me. Technology is important in every single classroom. That's why that's happening. I'm not going to spend $5,000 on something and not know if it's going to be something we're going to use at that level for much longer. So, in the future, it's definitely a possibility. There's tons of schools in our system that have it, but it just depends. So that's the rationale behind it. And an AR test, and I don't know how many you've seen, they're very rote, meaning that it's basic knowledge base, lower level. State test is not lower level. It's more inferencing, author's purpose, things of that nature, which is a higher level questioning strategy. So even though our kids are taking a ton of AR tests across our school, we haven't been able to see a correlation between the two. So we're actually just going to really look at all the options that are out there. One of the things we can do, and again I'm just throwing ideas out there, is you continue AR, but you make it voluntary for parents to use. Some parents will push their kids to do it. Other parents are not pushing their kids to do it. So that would make it an option for kids. Do you have AR at all? Is it something we need? Do we come up with a different product-based activity in regard to reading? One teacher has come up with an idea to do it as product-based, meaning that we would set a theme and then students would read a book and work toward that theme. And then we would have a reading fair that would allow that child to explain the project out in the open, almost like a science fair, but for reading. So there's a lot of different ideas that we have out there. We may do a combination of all those things together. But the reality is I didn't want to spend the PTO's money on something I just wasn't sure of where we were heading in regard to the direction. That was all. The people are passionate on both sides. There are some people that are dead on AR. There are. They are. I've never went on an AR list in my life for my son, ever. Just don't. Because my son reads. I know he's reading. I don't care. And I've said it in this room. I really am not that. I don't even care if he makes AR celebration. He does. So that works for me. He's competitive. Some kids aren't competitive. They don't like it. It's crushing to them when they don't make it. I thought the reading celebration was our best one we've ever had. I just did, because it was reading based. No, it's not bells and whistles. It didn't have an inflatable, which a kid asked me about. It didn't have, a giant play area or anything like that. We're reading. We had community leaders come to the school and do campfire reading for kids. I thought it was cool. Some kids may not have liked it as much as others. I actually read a portion of a book to try to get kids excited about a book. I read a chapter from a book, just almost like a preview to them. My groups seemed engaged when I did it. I think that's going to be hit and miss. I don't want it to be. We wanted it to be more reading based this year. So we were going to tie it into more reading stuff. So kids, it wasn't just this big party that they would get like a dance party. It was going to be more of a focus on enjoying literature, which is which the whole goal is to get kids excited about reading. So, you know, that's going to be kind of hit and miss. We have a mixed bag in that regard. So I have heard feedback like that before. And I don't think we can ever satisfy everybody in those kind of things. But in regard to AR itself, we are definitely looking at changing the model. If you have Imagine It, it depends on what grade level you're in. In 4th grade, they're using novels. So on a regular basis, they are assessing their kids on the chapters of the book, and they tie it into author's purpose and inferencing and sequencing and all those kind of things. In some of the lower grades, they use Imagine It, which is the reading program. They give the actual Imagine It test. So at the end of the story, they actually have tests, common assessments, and they don't use they don't use the book questions. They create assessments as grade levels. They tie it into that book, though. Oh yeah, AR is never going to be part of grading. Never. It's just not. That I can tell you, no matter what I decide, it's not going to be. The teachers are teaching those skills. We need to get our kids, even though it's going to be uncomfortable for some, there's no question, to get to that higher level of thinking. And we teach that in the classroom. You know, the teachers are teaching those higher level thinking skills in the classroom to better help a child be able to perform on those questions, because, you know, that's the kind of thing, when you look at the 21st century, that we're going to be responding to. Taking a story or a poem and looking at it and being able to see, why did that author write this poem? You know, going beyond just this poem is about daffodils. Instead, looking at what imagery was that author trying to come across in that particular piece of work, or what were they inferring by, if you read this line of this book, what did they infer by doing this? You know, looking at key vocabulary, which is another big thing we're trying to push this year, is teaching the kids more vocabulary. So when they get in a story, they see a word, they can then begin to make connections to what they're doing. So we're really trying to teach our kids to get to this level, but it's going to be a process, there's no question. Now, the key thing to me, the whole point of AR to me, is to get kids to want to read. And if it's becoming a deterrent to getting your child to read, that is the absolute antithesis of what the goal is. So if your child or any child would prefer to read Little Women, and that's not an AR book, which it probably is, but if they prefer to read that book, by all means, read that book. To me, it's reading. It's reading and exposure. Some people, like I said, some people are ultra competitive and prefer to do it. Other people aren't. You know, that's why we need to look at how I will say this. Based on the way we're celebrating it right now, it looks as if it's a priority, and it shouldn't be that way. So ever since this parent said this to me about 2 months ago, it's literally burning in the back of my brain. So that will change. And it's going to change in one way, shape, or form. Not sure exactly what it's going to look like, but it's going to change somehow. Some may like that, some probably won't. I guess I'll just kind of quickly reiterate what I said earlier, but the cost is obviously, you know, $5,000. It's pretty steep. I haven't decided yet in regard to where we're going to head with AR. You know, there is no correlation based on our data that shows that AR has really been beneficial in regard to our reading scores at this school. A lot of schools do it because the PTO has dropped $5,000 because they're making a ton of money. Huntersville does not push it at all. I've talked to that principal specifically about it. They have the $5,000 Renaissance exposure, but they don't push it at all. The principal really could care less if the kids are doing it or not. You know, it's kind of a hit and miss. We're kind of in the middle of evolving. When I came here 3 years ago, goals were set on 9 weeks. Parents came to me almost immediately saying that this is putting too much pressure on them, so I switched it to 6 weeks. So your AR goals are based on 6 weeks, so it allowed you to read another book that you enjoy. The only thing that bothers me about what the librarian said, and she hasn't spoken to me, which I wish she would, if this was a concern to her, is that as a librarian, my job is to make people excited about literature. I don't care if it's an AR book or not. In fact, I'm surprised that a librarian could care what an AR book is or not. To me, it's about what are the best books that are out there that you think will match a child's personality. You know, there are some parents that push their kids heavily in AR. There's others that are not pushing it at all. it really is kind of a mixed bag at our school in regard to the passion level that's coming along with AR. So we are actually meeting as a reading committee. We're looking at, are we going to do celebrations anymore for AR? What is this going to look like in the future? And we're going to actually have parent groups. So when I send out notification, please sign up, because we need a differing views in regard to what to do, because there are even teachers on the staff. Some are big AR people, some aren't. So it's kind of a polarizing thing. I'll say the same thing that I said to the school leadership team about 2 weeks ago. It was, we're spending way too much time talking about a program that really shouldn't be the priority of what we're doing in our school. So, we need to decide how that's going to look so we don't make it such a priority, because it isn't to me. It isn't. I want kids to read, period. That's all I care about. That's it. It's really not, it's nothing for anybody to prepare your child for or anything of that nature. It really, it will happen one more time this year in the spring, and it's basically done to assess where your kids are at this particular time. So the one they're getting ready to take in second grade is, well, K and 1 have already started. The window's already started, so they're slowly getting pulled back one-on-one to work with the teacher to go over some of these things. But it'll take everything that was supposed to be taught in first quarter and everything that's supposed to be taught in second quarter, and it kind of just gives a teacher a quick analysis, well, I shouldn't say quick, about 20-minute analysis of where that child is. What are they mastering? What are they not? What do we need to go back over again? If I've taught this already, they don't get it. We have to go back and re-loop. It's really a teaching tool in-house.
So it's not really like...
It's not anything that counts as a grade. It's not anything like that at all. It's a tool, a formative test is a tool that a teacher gives ongoing to kind of see where kids are at as we move. Now, if there's a situation where a child is performing exceptionally low across the board or in certain areas, that there's a concern from a teacher, that easily could come up in a conversation when you have a parent conference. Meaning that, on the recent formatives we did, just to give you some additional information, I'm not only seeing it in the classroom, but I saw it in the results of X. But it's not something you'll get home, Jimmy scored a 92, it's nothing like that. It's totally an in-house tool to help teachers as they create their groups in the classroom and as they set teaching. Yeah, and that's what's happening K-5.